The federal government has unveiled its surface fleet strategy, which includes an $11 billion boost to Australia's naval fleet. Joining us with more analysis live now is Jennifer Parker, Maritime Security Specialist and Expert Associate at the ANU's National Security College. Jennifer, appreciate your time. Thank you. An extra $11 billion to be spent on upgrading the fleet over the next decade. What do we get for it?
Yeah, Ash, look, thank you very much for having me on. Pretty significant day for the Royal Australian Navy and in fact for Australia as a whole. So what we get for it is the largest surface combatant fleet that we have had since World War II. So the current surface combatant fleet consists of 8 Anzac-class frigates, which are ageing, and 3 Hobart-class air warfare destroyers. Now, the Anzac-class were meant to be replaced by the Hunter-class frigate, announced in 2018, 9 of those. Today is announced that the Hunter-class frigate program, which has had a number of troubles, will be reduced from 9 to 6. And we will actually get 11 general-purpose frigates. So general-purpose meaning they can operate against submarines, aircraft, missiles, surface ships, etc. 3 of which we built overseas, 8 of which we built in Australia, and the first of which will come in the late 20s. One of the most interesting things of today's announcement was that we will be getting a large, optionally crewed surface vessel from the mid-30s, or 6 of those, in fact, working with the US. And the US have been doing a lot of experimentation on large uncrewed surface vessels. In fact, we saw a couple visit Australia last year coming across the Pacific, and we're now going to embark on working with them on that, which I think is really pleasing. We also saw the troubled Arafura offshore patrol vessel program, so that's our 1,600-tonne constabulary vessel, reduced from the 12 expected to 6 to be delivered.
The opposition has reacted to this today. They're arguing that in the short term, this plan does nothing apart from decommissioning vessels. I've just read some analysis by Greg Sheridan in the Oz, and he's calling this a cross between a damp squib and a huge con job. Is that fair criticism we're saying today, or is that just the nature of defence purchases, that it is always a slow and often cumbersome process?
Well, I don't think it's fair criticism. Look, we shouldn't have got to where we got to. So we shouldn't be at the point where the surface fleet is atrophying. You know, HMAS Anzac was announced today, so one of the 8 Anzac class, as being decommissioned or tied up, and HMAS Arunta, the second oldest of the Anzac class to go. So actually, although this is a significant increase in surface combatant fleet, the critics are right that it is actually technically a decrease between now and the end of the 2020s. The challenge, though, with shipbuilding is that you can't just place an order tomorrow and Amazon delivers you a warship. That's not how this works. And so it does take a couple of years lead time. And I think the fact that we have agreed to buy some from being built overseas is really paying a nod to the need to accelerate. Now, but as I said, we shouldn't have gotten to where we did. The Anzac class, the first of which was commissioned in 1996, the 2009 white paper announced that we needed to replace them, but it wasn't until 2018 that we made a decision on that, which is the Hunter class. So absolutely, there are challenges. I'm assuming that the government and defence have made an assessment that the risk period and the period between now and the end of the 2020s, that there is a lower risk of the potential of conflict in the region. And, you know, that's a risk call, and we'll have to see how that plays out. But by and large, I think it is a net positive.
Jennifer, we know the ADF has a personnel shortage. How automated are these vessels? Could we face problems when it comes to actually being able to crew them?
So the ADF does have a personnel shortage. I note that the Chief of the Defence Force announced at estimates last week the amount of that. And the ADF is, of course, trying to grow. So in 2022, the then government announced that the ADF would grow by 30%, and in fact, the Navy would grow to 20,000 by 2040. That's obviously a number that's going to need to be reassessed in the light of today's announcement. But there are challenges. Often the conversation around workforce, specifically for the Navy, talks about recruitment and retention and trying to grow in that way. But there are many ways to increase capacity. And I would think that the announcement today, alongside the AUKUS announcement of the optimal pathway from last year, really means that we need to look at the structure of the ADF and the structure of the Royal Australian Navy. As I said, many ways to generate capacity. We could more effectively use our reserves. For example, if you wanted to join the Army Reserves today, you could call up and do that. If you wanted to join the Navy Reserves or the Air Force Reserves, that is difficult to do unless you're a doctor or a lawyer or some specific skill sets. So looking at how we better use our reserve base, but also looking at things like, do we need a Coast Guard? Do we need a fleet auxiliary where actually our supply ships are crewed by civilians, which is what the US effectively does and the UK? Do we need to look at different readiness levels for task groups on the East Coast and the West Coast? Really, there needs to be a fundamental look at the structure of the Royal Australian Navy while we focus on recruitment and retention to work out how we crew these capabilities. Absolutely, going down the path of uncrewed capabilities is part of that solution, but it will never solve the whole problem.
Jennifer Parker, really appreciate your analysis. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much, Ash.